I feel like I'm part of something special, not some underground esports revolution. I've been invited to a small group testing out some betas or prototypes of this one-handed keyboard, and I'm in direct communication with the gentleman designing these devices to give my feedback, helping mold and shape the future design of this product. However, mold and shape, they're already there. The ergonomics are perfect. Yeah, the software suite isn't the sexiest thing installed on your PC, and the surface area you're making contact with is plastic. But you can't even buy this device yet, and the model shipping to your doorstep would look and feel nothing like this model. Not that that's a bad thing. This thing's pretty sweet. Ergonomically, this is a very comfortable keyboard, as it does have kind of a half-pipe design over here for you skateboarders, but in all seriousness, it is a very comfortable design as you can kind of squeeze the inner buttons like this or extend your fingers out. The top three buttons can be a little bit of a stretch if you don't have very long fingers. I'm about 5'11". I'm not going to bust out my measuring tape and let you ladies know exactly what I'm working with here, but these are my hands here. This is an iPhone 13 Pro in my hand. And the three top buttons, which I have assigned to a red RGB color currently, are a bit of a stretch to hit, but extremely comfortable even in long gaming sessions, even with the beta model that I have here, which has no rubber, no padded foam, anything like that. This is just the bare bones shape that you're gonna get. Stupid comfortable, so I can imagine the final production unit. It's gonna be great. As for the stock switches on board, they are going with Cherry MX low profile speeds. That's quite a mouthful. Hey, why don't you tell the people what you have to say? Super quiet switches. Now, these switches are currently not hot swappable. That was a question that I had for the creator of this one-handed keyboard. However, it can't be too difficult to simply unsolder these switches and solder on your own if you don't like Cherry MX speeds. I was a fan of them, and I think a lot of gamers will be, as they're pretty versatile and fit a lot of situations well, whether you're using this for gaming or maybe you're using this as a one-handed editing keyboard. The analog stick, we'll talk about that later. 26 programmable keys, which is more than most one-handed keyboards that I have tested, and you can create your own macros. So when you're playing a very grindy game, maybe you're farming for some beats in EverQuest or something, and you're sitting there digging, you can just set up some macros and have your character on autopilot, basically farming for those beets or turnips or whatever you're doing for your side quest. Get it? It's the name of the keyboard. And in the software suite, you can set up an unlimited amount of profiles, but you can bind 8 of them to the profile switch button, which doesn't do anything on my prototype version other than light up and look pretty with the 3 status lights next to it. But what's going to happen on the finalized version is you're going to press that profile switch and it's going to swap between 8 savable profiles on the fly. There's only 3 LED lights on there, so I'm assuming it'll be a combination of different lights on to let you know which one of the 8 profiles you're on. If you would like the exact dimensions, they've made it easy for us. I don't need to bust out the soft measuring tape and measure her hips for us because we've got them right here. 18.5 centimeters by 21.5 by 4 centimeters. Well, just looking at it, that was going to be width, length, and depth. And this is the man, the myth, the legend, the hombre, the dude, the guy that built the keyboard. They seem like a nice couple and they make a comfortable keyboard. What more do you want from them? If you're interested in getting your hands on one of these units, you can reach out directly to Matt, the maker. That makes him sound like he's God. The maker Matt, the creator of all things one-handed keyboards. Let's talk a little bit about this name, Dunwyvern, which I looked up how to pronounce it correctly, listened to like 6 or 7 YouTube videos from D&D specialists explaining the mythological back lore of the wyvern. It's a dragon, by the way. But Dunwyvern, this is coming directly from Matt, the maker of this keyboard, get ready for it, is Scott or Welsh for Castle of the Dragon. We've met our quota of badass for the day. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to be playing on my Castle of the Dragon keyboard. That's pretty badass. And quick fun side note, this is definitely marketed towards MMORPG players that have all their spells on cooldowns and whatnot. However, I've always pushed this on FPS players, first-person shooter players. Why? Because when you're transitioning from console to PC, it is a huge learning curve going from a gamepad or controller to the native input of a keyboard and mouse. But by using one of these one-handed keyboards that has an analog stick, you're still using the movement of that, clicking it down for sprint, maybe you have a little space bar next to it for jump, so you can just focus on getting getting used to aiming with a mouse, and then you can integrate a full-size keyboard and get used to using that. So I've always thought these one-handed keyboards are great for new PC shooter players. Also, another thing, this is very niche because not all of you are content creators, YouTubers, and live streamers and whatnot, but for you editors out there, you're chopping through footage in DaVinci Resolve or Adobe Premiere Pro, whatever, you could have an entire profile just for hotkeys in your editing software. Okay. You just got yourself a Dunwyvern side quest. I don't know how, they're not even out yet, but you got one. You need some software for it. Over here in the top, there's downloads. You're going to need two things. You're going to need the actual software program for your computer, depending if you're on Mac or PC. Then you're also going to need the side quest firmware, which I'll show you how to flash that to the keyboard. Granted, with the final product or model, you probably won't need to do this. Now, I do have the software suite pinned down here to my toolbar for easy access, and out of the box, the keyboard is completely useless, at least this beta or prototype is, as there is no software flash. You need to come to update firmware, then select firmware, and select that file that you saved from their website. Once you've selected that, click program, it will run, and after about 30 seconds, you will be up and running. Now, this is the personal profile that I have created, and you will be able to have an unlimited amount of profiles up top, but you will be able to toggle between 8 on the fly directly from the keyboard using that profile switch button. Now, this isn't the best software program in the world. I'm sure it will evolve over time. You cannot full screen it, and you cannot pinch the sides to make it any bigger or smaller. Once you've made changes, make sure you hit activate, and that actually flashes your new bindings to your keyboard. What I'm not a huge fan of, out of the box, there is no default profile loaded, and you have to manually set up each individual button. In order to do that, you will name a function. For example, potion, and I want that bound to the O button on my keyboard. Hit save, and now you will have potion over here, and you can drag and drop this onto any of the available slots. Now, if you want to clear that, go ahead and right click and hit clear. And again, to apply those settings, hit activate. As for changing the RGB color, it's the same concept. You have this RGB slider wheel, you select the color you want, and then you will drag this color over to whatever button you want. Now, these four cannot be selected because these are the directional inputs of your analog stick, your thumbstick. This is the software suite. It works. It's functional. It's serviceable. It makes it to where you can bind the buttons and set up the RGB control. I'm sure it will evolve over time and become a much more smooth experience. Let's look at this keyboard piece by piece, component by component. First of all, the actual shell, the molding, the ergonomics, the comfort, the shape of this bad boy. It is utterly perfect in my opinion. I have extensively used the entire Razer lineup of one-handed keyboards, and this is substantially more comfortable in my opinion. And this is the prototype or beta version that is 3D printed with no rubber padding or The final product is going to have injection molded silicone or rubber compound directly in the palm grip. So it's going to have the same shape or dimension as the unit I'm testing here, except instead of this 3D printed plastic, it's going to be a soft, supple rubber, which is also going to have a small pattern etched or printed into it to keep your palm from getting hot or sweaty. As for the keys, I like that there are 26 of them. That's a good amount. You're not going to be struggling for keybinds or anything. And keep in mind, you do have 8 profiles that you're going to be able to swap through on the final model. So 26 times, that's about 208 buttons that you're going to have ready for you. I'm not taking into account the look or feel of the keycaps because my model is 3D printed, as where the final model is going to be smooth, poly, injected, carbonate, plastic. It's going to be just regular plastic. The stock switches are Cherry MX low profile RGB speeds. They can best be described in 2 words. In my opinion, that would be silent and linear. They are virtually silent. The only noise you're going to hear is when you bottom out, plastic on plastic at the bottom of the frame. But if you don't bottom out because you stop right when you actuate the switch, they're virtually silent. Not to mention they are completely linear. There is no increase in resistance or anything like that, and there is no tactile click. They just carry the same resistance from the beginning of the switch all the way to the end. Some people hate switches like that and prefer a nice tactile click, like for example what I have with these tactile green switches in this Razer keyboard. I will say I do hope that they come out with a hot swappable version, even if it's $40-50 more expensive than the standard non-swappable version, because that gives gamers the chance to swap switches on the fly, depending on their playstyle and the games they play. Me personally, I had no complaint with the stock switches, and since they're not hot swappable, I wouldn't even take the time and effort to desolder and swap switches. Even if they were hot swappable, I would probably leave the stock switches in there because I like them. I do like the RGB lighting. I think it looks good, although my opinion won't really matter for the final product considering it's going to have different keycaps. So the RGB is going to bleed through the keycaps differently. It's going to look different. And as for durability, these switches are rated for 100 million actuations or clicks. If you wanted fine detail, here it is. You've got 45 cn of operating force to actuate the switches. That's the resistance needed. You have 1 millimeter of pre-travel or take up. You don't really feel at all. And then a total of 3.2 millimeters from the beginning of the switch until you bottom out. And bottoming out is the only audible sound you're going to get. There is no click to these switches. switches. As for the thumbstick, I am sure on the final model they're going to have some kind of a rubberized coating or a different cap, the actual surface material that you make contact with your thumb. That was my only complaint. The surface area is incredibly slick, but you could slip over some kind of a universal thumbstick cap to give you a little bit more height on that stick and most importantly more grip. But in the final production unit, that will be a different surface material, probably a much grippier rubber. It's great though. You can click down on it just like you would click down on the stick on a gamepad or controller. So if you want to activate your sprint by doing that, maybe you're using this for first-person shooter use. I would like more resistance with the analog stick if possible, and it'd be awesome if it was a magnetic Hall effect module versus a standard potentiometer thumbstick module, as they are far less susceptible to getting stick drift. Damn near impossible, making that one less potential failure point of this keyboard. Finally, the software works, but it's not the most intuitive. A couple of tips or pointers that I think would make it a little bit more fluid and smooth. The default profile is completely blank. The keyboard just simply doesn't work at all until you upload that stock firmware patch. I'm sure this will change with the final product, but it would be great if the keyboard was at least usable with a stock out-of-the-box default profile. Usually how these one-handed keyboards work is it just defaults all of the buttons on the left side of the keyboard, your movement keys over here, and then everything around it is just automatically bound to that one-handed keyboard. And then if you want to switch things on your own, you can, but at least you can use it right out of the box, plug and play. It's a paperweight when you get it until you program or bind each individual button, which does take time because you have to manually assign each button and then drag and drop them in. And if you want the RGB color, you also have to drag and drop those to each button as well. What I can say for it, it works. It allows you to bind the buttons and program the colors. Is it a smooth experience? No, not really. And it's time consuming. I'm sure it'll get better over time, as the actual physical product will as well. I am very excited to have been part of this project, testing out this prototype beta version, because I think it's better than a lot of finished, completed one-handed keyboards on the market. So I do feel like after Matt and the team takes the feedback from the testers, myself included, and the other individuals that have tested this keyboard, the final product is going to be phenomenal. The website's linked in the description below. Feel free to reach out to Matt with any inquiries, and I have a feeling if you're patient, these things will be available for purchase soon. If you enjoyed the video, liking it helps it to get seen by more gamers. This information will reach and assist them as well, which in turn helps me grow this little channel, which I do greatly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, as well as honest gaming product reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers, mics, chairs, etc. There are some hefty exclusive discount codes found only in the description of my videos and only for the audience here at Gamer Heaven. I have links to all my other platforms and socials in the description below. To get in touch with myself and the Stallions and Stallionettes of Gamer Heaven, join the community Discord, and check me out at twitch.tv where I go live every other leap year on a blue moon if it falls into an odd calendar number, and my pH balance is on point. Just kidding. Starting June, I'm going to be live streaming a lot. Thanks for watching. This has been AK40 Kevin hosting Gamer Heaven, and I'll see you tomorrow because I upload daily. All the time. 60% of the time. Sometimes. Most of the time. Peace.